Okay, welcome back, everybody. We have two more items on this agenda before we go to an in-camera, but the next item on the agenda is member motion from Councillor Barros about Lake Wilcox parking, which is 14.2. So I will send it over to Councillor Barros to get us started on that.
Thank you. So this is fairly self-explanatory. The only little bit that I will provide a highlight is, as we all know, the Lake Wilcox Park has been a massive success to the point that people come from all over York region and abroad. And of course, the problems that we were challenged with in the beginning was people treated it like a provincial park. They would come in the morning, they would stay right till night, they would set up tents, they would have fires. They would reserve space for their extended family and the large party that was coming later in the day. Local residents were not happy, are still not happy. Their park. Now, while it wasn't paid for with tax dollars, it was paid for by development charges, which were there because of new owners that moved in. And it's maintained by tax dollars. So we have a responsibility to make sure that it's available for our residents first and foremost. So we put in a paid parking system first to help alleviate the costs that we were incurring in doing this additional cleanup every weekend from the disaster that ensued on the weekends. It was also a thought to be able to discourage people from taking so many vehicles to this particular parking area and to maybe spread them out in the different parking lots. Well, we've collected money, but we've done nothing in the way of deterring people from coming. They are still coming in large numbers. So I've been speaking with local residents and we've been looking around the region at what other areas have done. And they have started to put rates in place that would give people thought to, is that where I want to go? Now let's be clear. We didn't build this as a tourist attraction. This isn't in the middle of our downtown core where people are benefiting local businesses while they're there. They get off the highway, they come down the road, they park there, they do their thing, they finish the day and they go. If you're there, you see people, they bring all their own food, everything. So there's not an opportunity to perhaps educate people and have them go into the local stores and bring food. Not the kind of group that we have gathering there. So I've put some new pricing in place, which I would like council to endorse so that we can send a very clear and strong message to our residents, our shared residents, that we take this seriously and we're going to try to do whatever we can to create more parking spaces available for Richmond Hill residents. And you know what? We may have to take more actions in the future. Maybe in the future, we may have to put aside parking just for Richmond Hill parking permits to dedicate spaces. But for now, I think as a first step, let's try these additional prices. If the lots are still full all the time with these additional prices, great. We now have more money to clean the facilities up without tapping into taxpayers' money. And we can then clearly identify spaces to put aside for just our residents. So the motion is just to change the rates for this year, have staff report back afterwards, and hopefully they've reported back and I'm able to report back that residents are happy that they're once again able to enjoy their local park and we've got peace restored in the community. Thank you all.
Happy to second.
Okay, I see Councillor DePaulo. Do you want to second it? And then we'll go to Councillor Pirelli.
I will, yeah. And I do want to speak to this. I'm actually glad this motion has been worded the way it has. I'm one of those very affected residents living across from our community center and across from the Lake Wilcox parking. Our neighborhood has been restricted. So we, in our neighborhood, don't have the luxury of a 3-hour parking like everywhere else in Richmond Hill. And when you have guests, and when you're running your office from your home, you're not even able to have temporary visitors. But the staff has been very accommodating in the sense that all residents are given an exemption, but the exemption is limited to the household owners. And for visitors, it becomes a problem. I think this is a good step in the right direction. It's a new thing for Richmond Hill to be charging for parking anywhere, and it's necessary at Lake Wilcox. May become necessary down the road for those using observatory or other destination parks that we have in the city. But I'm supportive of the motion as worded. I think we need to take the burden off of our local residents and place it on those who are coming in to enjoy our amenities from elsewhere, and that then they rightfully should be paying whatever the market will bear in terms of a cost for parking. That's what happens with other cities. When I go to Toronto, it's very expensive to park at a Leaf game or other public places where the demand is coming from outside of the jurisdiction involved. So I support the motion. I'm happy to second. Thank you, Mayor West.
Okay, thank you. Regional Local Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you. I just wanted to second this wonderful motion by Councillor Barros.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually just had a few quick questions, and I think through you, I'll direct them to Commissioner Steele. I'm just wondering, when there was pay parking implemented, was there a study done or an assessment to see what the impact of implementing the paid parking system was at the time, whether it affected residents, outsiders, and what the ratio was and what the outcome was for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there was a Lake Wilcox pay parking study done in 2019 before we implemented the pay parking in 2020.
How about after it was implemented? Have we assessed the impacts on local residents, visitors since we've implemented? I know we had COVID and the facilities were closed, but just wondering.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So no, we haven't done any extensive monitoring at this point because, as you said, so many changes have been taking place with COVID. The park itself was shut down for a period of time. The parking lots were actually closed for some periods. And this is the first summer that the community center has actually been open. So we will definitely be monitoring this summer is our intention to see what's happening.
Thank you. And if I may ask, do we know do we have a percentage of residents? I understand that we're issuing parking permits for residents. Do we have any issues with the residents not being able to obtain parking permits? Or is this mostly a visitor issue that we're seeing happen with respect to parking?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So to clarify, residents are able to park for free and they can obtain permits online, one per household. And then if they need additional ones, this is the first year we've offered additional household permits if they want to come and get them in person. We have heard some concerns that the system is a little complicated, but it seems to be working well now. And I wouldn't say we've had any specific complaints from residents.
Okay, thank you. I would, my position on this is, I agree with Councillor Barros that parking is an issue there, definitely at Lake Wilcox, but I'd just like to see some type of impact or report on the implementation of paid parking. So if I may, I'd like to refer this back to staff for two reasons. One, to get a report on the impact of implementation of paid parking in the facilities since they've been reopened, and two, to get a report back on the impact of increasing the fees to see how it would affect residents versus outside visitors, if I may. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, you're capturing that?
Mr. Mayor, I think what Councillor Shepherd may have wanted was an amendment to add this to I can't imagine that she would want to send the message to the residents that, oh, the government's going to study this, continue suffering until they
Okay.
get back to us.
Counselor, I don't
If,
think that's what I heard from Ms. Shepherd. Go ahead.
through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, no, Councillor Barros. The wording of your motion states that we're going to implement it and then study the impacts on residents at the end of the year. I just think that it's prudent to, study the impact that it would have on our local residents before implementing something new. That's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Point of information.
Thank you. Point of information. Go ahead, Councillor Barros.
Thank you. So we're going to have a motion to refer to staff to get a report on the impacts on residents.
You're just repeating what she said. I don't think-
Correct. I'm trying to get the understanding. Please don't interrupt me. So, Councillor Shepherd, are you suggesting that the data might be available as to how many residents, how many outside people are not going to show up because of the increased rates, and how that'll positively benefit the residents of Oak Ridges this coming season? I'm trying to understand the true spirit of the referral, because we haven't had these increased rates yet, so we don't know what's going to happen.
Councillor, I think you're maybe just disagreeing with her. I think it's
No, I'm not.
pretty.
I'm trying to
Excuse me.
understand the spirit.
I'm responding
please
to
don't
your.
tell me what I think
I'm
I'm
responding
saying.
to your point of information. Councillor Shepherd can respond as well, but I think it was going to be fairly clear, and it was fair when it comes up on the screen. I think it is fairly clear what she said, what she's looking for from staff. So, Councillor Shepherd, if there's anything else you'd like to add, I think that would answer his question.
I just don't like to presume. So I'd like for the staff to give us a potential report on the impacts that the increase would have on the residents before I decide either way.
Okay, thank you.
I'll reserve for later.
Do you want a second round?
We haven't had a first round on the referral motion yet.
Okay,
That was a point of information.
got it.
Point of information.
Councillor Pirelli,
What are we waiting for?
we're just waiting for the clerk to get this up on the screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought my screen froze.
No.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe I have captured Councillor Shepherd's motion to refer, and I would just ask her to confirm.
So that's fine, Councillor Shepherd? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to refer on the floor. We need a seconder for that motion.
I'll second that for discussion purposes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silvas, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. This is interesting. I do agree with Councillor Shepherd that we should be getting some more information. I find the rate of $10 to be huge. So I would like to hear what staff have to say as well, and perhaps give us just a little bit more information about where we're going here. We definitely need to. I don't disagree with Councillor Barros's motion, but I do. I definitely would like to see more information, and I think staff are quite capable of giving us that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Silvitz. Councillor Pirelli, I see your virtual hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This motion, I believe, has been available for a while. I would have hoped that anybody that had any questions would have, as you stated many times, Mr. Mayor, would have contacted staff and asked those questions at that time, but I understand under the circumstances.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Shepherd.
It clearly, Commissioner Steele clearly delineated that no impact study was already done. So there's no way for me to presume what the impact is if no study's been done.
Thank you.
So what was
I
the-
agree. Councillor Pirelli, that's not a point of order. Go ahead.
You're right, it's not a point of order.
Sorry. I mean, go
you.
ahead without
Thank
saying
you.
that. That was a
It's
point of
not
order.
a point of order. You're
That was a
correct.
valid point of order on Councillor
Freudian,
Shepherd's part.
Freudian slip, you got caught.
That's
and that's
actually, no, it's not
okay.
a Freudian slip.
And that's
Councillor, go
okay.
ahead.
You said the right thing. You didn't want to say the right thing, but
Go
the truth
ahead,
always
Councillor.
comes out. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to support the referral motion, and I'll tell you why. Lake Wilcox, I went there 2 to 3 times a week. I observed personally what was going on. I spoke with bylaw and parking enforcement. I spoke with Commissioners, Director Steele or Commissioner Steele, I forget her title right now. And I've had lengthy conversations with Councillor Barrows. The only way we're going to find out, we know that residents are having a difficult time finding parking because outsiders paying for parking were taking up spots. That's a fact. And Commissioner Steele can confirm that. All you have to do is ask her. And the only way we're going to find out how we lower the amount of residents is by increasing the rate. Councillor Barrows has a great idea. Now, whether that number is $6, $8, $10, or $15 an hour, we don't know. So the only way we're going to find out is if we implement the change and see what happens. It's the only way we're going to find out if the number's right. After we run this for a month or 2 or 3, staff will keep us updated. And if we have to adjust the rates, we will do so again. So we don't need any more reports. We know what the facts are. What we need to do is implement the change to try and address the problem and take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the motion to refer?
Point of information
Go ahead.
through you to Ms. Steele. Commissioner, do you have the type of statistical data that one would
Hey,
expect?
Councillor, that's not a point of information. That's a question.
I haven't finished yet, and yes, it is a
But
question.
it isn't.
You are
You're-
exactly
a point
right,
of
it's a question.
information-
And as per
A point of
5.7.9, it
information
says
is
if I'm
not
asking a question
directed to staff.
of
That's
staff
what you
related
do
to the
during your
motion, I can actually
time.
get an answer. We went through that with your friend to the left, and he said, you're right. Now you're saying he was wrong? And you're right.
Councillor, you could ask that question during your time
No.
in speaking.
When I'm
Not-
speaking, I want to debate.
No,
I don't want to ask
no,
questions.
you ask questions when you're speaking. That's what we do.
5.7.9, what does it say?
That is what
does
you
it say,
do.
Mr.
This
Mayor?
is not, this is a question to staff. You can do that
5.7.9,
instead
what
of
does it say?
interrupting. You can do that during your time to speak.
Point of order.
Point of order. Go ahead.
What does 5.7.9 actually say?
It is actually not particularly clear on point of order. And what I'm saying is, out of courtesy to the rest of your colleagues on council, you have an opportunity to speak and you're going to ask staff a question, then you can ask that question during your opportunity to speak.
What would I use point of information for then in your opinion?
If there's such
In
a
your
little
opinion.
bit of clarification that you want to ask to the mover or to something like that, that's fine. That's worth interrupting.
But that's
Right
not-
now, you're interrupting and asking a question that you should be asking a question of during your time speaking.
Who am I interrupting?
Okay,
Who
is
had-
it, would you
who-
like,
who had the floor
you
when I
could
said point of
actually right
information?
now,
Who-
you
who
could
am I
be the
interrupting?
person to ask, to be speaking. So go ahead. It is your time to speak. Go ahead.
Point of information. Through you, because that's what the procedural bylaw says, through you, Commissioner Steele. Do you have the statistical data that one would expect to receive to produce a report like this? When I ask that question, I'm thinking of the new GOAT facilities. They have a red and a green light for every spot. They then have the ability to download and tell us exactly how many spots are available at what period of time and what percentage of spots remain vacant over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year. Do we have that kind of statistical data for Lake Wilcox Park, the community center?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, we don't have technology that counts the number of spaces and the number of vacant spaces. What we would be doing is monitoring in person, have people monitoring the number of vacant spots at any given time. And we would also be using the data from our meters to figure out how many spots are being paid for at a certain time. But because the residents don't pay, their cars aren't accounted for in the lot, right, by the meters.
I understand all of that very clearly. I'm just trying to, I'm done my question. I'll now start speaking. Thank you for that answer. To my colleagues, to Ms. Shepherd and more directly, this is going to put this off for another year again. I don't want to listen to residents yelling and screaming that they can't get parking spots because we are doing a study. You've just heard from Ms. Steele. They will personally have people there looking at the lot, trying to figure out what spots are available or what not. I think what you were asking for was a report that would come back prior to this heavy parking season. But as you heard, they don't have that data readily available to compile statistically in a report to bring it to us to tell us what's going to happen. This will be at the end of this busy season. And I'm sorry, but my residents just can't wait. I said in here, and perhaps I didn't explain it properly when I presented the motion, the reason it's worded at the end that we report back is because we don't have any data right now to currently give you, to give us, to give residents. They will do all that in the course of this year and then report back. Now, I hope no one's suggesting we just let the residents suffer, do the study, and then realize, yeah, you are right, Mr. and Mrs. Resident, there is a problem, and let's try the rate change. So I can't support the referral because I now know exactly what it will do, knowing that there's no stats available to compile and put in there. If I didn't explain that previously, I apologize, and I hope we can move on.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this referral? Okay, Councillor Munch.
Sorry, my screen's off. Yeah, so this, again, I call common sense. In my view, I'm not saying sometimes today, common sense to what I consider real easy processes. We have an issue here with destination parks. We had a DDO committee yesterday. This issue is a live issue and is going to continue to be a live issue as the area grows, either from us or people around us grow, and people want leisure activities. And destination areas like parks and festivals and that kind of thing are an obstacle. And we need to plan for that. And here we are reacting. And, the Ward 1's going to be getting it because obviously it's in his ward, but everyone's looking at this. What happens if people have guests all of a sudden, or they didn't have time to go on the web, or if their website's down? We know the stats. We're not going to be perfect. And I apologize. I appreciate what you're doing, frankly. We at council need to start managing and making hard choices so that we don't have to have staff having to, kind of buffer and deal and have the frustration that they may have. And so that they can come forwards with pragmatic options to say, hey guys, I want to let you know, I really could use this in order to make this area better. So we could work in an innovative approach with efficient use of resources, which is in our master focus on almost every report I see. Yet here we are truly being ineffective because we're so busy bickering and playing games and not raising our common sense. I'm not asking us to be qualified and educational. Simply common sense would be a nice start. So we need to help with the parking situation. because even with this motion, if and when it gets through, and even with more reports, we're going to have a challenge of parking. The Ward 3 councillor moved a motion last year to say, my residents don't want the excess parking. Okay. The Ward 1 councillor saying, hey, my residents are getting tired. And you have people who are enforcing these guidelines and raising staff who are saying, hey, we're doing our best, but what do you want me to do? So we have a very tough conflictual challenge and we got to deal with it. And I'm hoping that at some point, we don't just wait for a staff report to say, what are we supposed to think? I'm pretty confident that every one of us has an intellectual capacity to think. We have a problem with parking. We have a problem with parking at destination areas. It's a destination park that's growing, and it's going to be problematic for years to come. This is a choice, and I'm okay if we move it or don't move it. I'll follow the will of council. But I will say to you that most importantly to me is the quality of life for people to enjoy the amenities so we can actually have a way better tomorrow than we do today. And we're so busy bickering and playing games and not dealing with issues that it's not fun. It's so unfair. So I say to council, raise our game, because the halo effect of being a new councillor, or the halo effect of us being first-time councillor, or halo effect of being here for years to come and knowing the game isn't acceptable down the road. So this particular area where people are having frustration with parking, I get complaints. I'm assuming every other councillor gets complaints. I'm sure staff get even more complaints. We got to work with this. We got to work through it. And we got to raise parking to restrict people from going there. Okay. We heard yesterday at the DDO that local residents there are planning to drive a block away if necessary to take their cooler. If we have residents doing that, we're never going to have enough parking. Ever, ever, ever. And if people want to camp there and say, I'm entitled because I live next door to the park, you know, outside of this box that we're in, real quick, there are people who buy homes right next door to schools and their kids can't go there. We have people who live right next door to parks and they can't go there. I'm saddened by that. Anyway, enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'd just like to weigh in. I will support this. I actually do agree 100% with the ward councillor that there is a problem with the park. I mean, it's a problem because the park is so good. But and we need to address that. And we implemented the paid parking last year, and if I'm not mistaken, we also implemented a number of other parking restrictions and so on. I think that given the pandemic and so on, I think it is prudent for us to be taking a look at seeing what those measures, what impact those measures likely had, and if there's other measures that are needed. I'm just not convinced that raising the rate to whatever amount, whether it be this amount or some other amount, will necessarily do what we need it to do. And I'm also concerned that there will be other impacts that I can't profess to understand that could end up happening that wouldn't be positive. So I guess to you, Acting Commissioner Steele, how long would it take for you to come back with some recommendations on both the price and also the anything else that we could possibly do, which is, I think, is in line with this referral motion is?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's a difficult question to answer, sorry. We would at least want to see and monitor what happens over a long weekend to compare to the baseline study that we did in 2019, because there was monitoring, including over a long weekend for that, as on the basis that that's probably the peak use. And we would need to see good weather for sure. So that would make it very difficult, I think, for us to be reporting back before the summer recess. It might be possible, but it would be very close.
Okay, so it's not going to take a year, though. I mean, you'd have it back sometime, hopefully before the summer recess.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to
Okay,
make that promise, but we could try to do that for sure.
Okay. I think I would prefer to look at a more comprehensive approach that we can actually take to our residents and say, you know, we've done some research on this, and this is what you know, we can come up with. It's our best opportunity for a significant change, and so I'll support this. We'll see where that goes. Okay, I see no other speakers to this referral motion, so we'll call the vote. All those in favor of the
Recorded vote, please.
recorded vote, it's been requested by Councillor Barros.
Thank you. Voting on the motion to refer this to staff, Councillor Barros.
No.
Thank you, Mayor West.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Munch. Councillor Munch, please.
I can't see the motion, unfortunately, because my screen is off.
I'm happy to read it, that the member's motion of Councillor Barros, Lake Wilcox parking, be referred to staff for a report back to council on the impacts of the implementation of the existing paid parking at Lake Wilcox and the implications of the proposed parking rates in the motion. Your vote, please. Sorry.
I'll say yes to that.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Silovitz.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor Pirelli.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
No.
Thank you. The motion to refer does carry.
Okay, thank you. So our last item on the agenda then is 14.4, member motion, Regional Local Councillor Pirelli, securing land for off-leash dog park. So I'll turn this over to Regional Local Councillor Pirelli to get us started, and I presume you will move that motion, Councillor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'll be moving my motion. And let me tell you how I came up with this. In our parks recreation culture plan, it was identified many years ago that we need an off-leash dog park in the south. For those that you were around back in the 2 terms of council ago, you'll know that I was very instrumental in getting the Tower Hill off-leash dog park that was actually decommissioned. I got it recommissioned back. And that was a tremendous success and has been ever since. And since then, and it's been many, many years, staff, for whatever reason, haven't been able to secure an off-leash dog park in the south. We know with the intensification that's been going on and that will continue to go on, there's, more and more people want pets, dogs. More and more people are living in high-rise buildings, and they need a place for those dogs to go and get exercise and run freely. And that is the beauty of the off-leash dog park. I'll remind council that when we were talking about the Tower Hill off-leash dog park, there was a petition with over 2,000 signatures at the time. I suspect that if we were to do a survey again today, we would probably get 4,000 people supporting that. There's no doubt in my mind. This pandemic has made our pets even more dear to us. And being locked up during the pandemic, we craved a place to go outdoors. There's no doubt that a large parcel of land in the south, close to where this is going to be needed, which is the intensification along Yonge Street, is going to be problematic. The facts are that tracts of land close to Yonge Street or on Yonge Street are going for as high as 20 million an acre. I mean, the prices are just crazy. But if history teaches us anything, prices aren't likely to go down unless there's a burst in the bubble for a temporary period of time, which no one can predict. And so when this culture plan came out, recreational culture and parks plan came out, one of the residents and owner of a tract of land, I've spoken to the commissioner briefly about it, Commissioner Kwan, and this tract of land is approximately 34 feet by 300 feet. It'll be adjacent to a future road, and it's literally 100 meters or less from Yonge Street, and it's in the south end. It seems to be an ideal piece of land for us to purchase. Now, normally I would bring this in a closed session because we wouldn't want the owner to know that we were, seeking to purchase their land. But unfortunately, it was the owner that approached us, so there is no secret. If this piece of land isn't purchased by us, it will go back to the open market, and it will be, sold to adjacent. On its own, it can't be used for much, but it adds value to any adjacent neighbor. So if we have any questions, we should direct them to Commissioner Kwan. But this is about getting our real estate department in conjunction with all the other staff, planning, etc., to go and enter into negotiations with the landowner to see if there's a possibility to purchase this land before they put it on the open market and sell it to someone else. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And it's been problematic to find an off-leash dog park. It's in the last 10 years, staff haven't brought us a viable solution. So it's important that we don't let this one go. So that's my motion. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'm sure you have a lot of questions because there's not a lot of detail in this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a seconder for this motion. Okay, I don't see a seconder. Okay, Councillor Munch. Do you want to speak to it?
I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion about it. I do think that we should go in camera though, because we are talking about a piece of property. And I'd like to get the solicitor's point of view. I've heard the mover, and I'm happy to second to have the discussion. But I do think this type of thing, when we're talking about real estate openly in public, should be done in private. But I would like to, confidence, because I think that's our standard policy. And I think we should follow with that concept of how we go forwards. But I'd like to hear you through the chair to our solicitor to hear if you feel it would be worthwhile, or you believe that it's entirely to go and have this in an open discussion.
Okay, well, Mr. Solicitor.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's completely up to council. There is an exemption in the Municipal Act for these types of things, but it's not compulsory, and it's up to council whether they decide to exercise that exemption to the open meeting rule in this circumstance.
Thank you. Through you, or maybe to you, the chair, seeing we're already going into camera, is it possible we can add this to the in-camera report in camera while we're there? Add this as a line item? Can we do that through the clerk?
Okay, so that to you, Mr. Clerk, can you give us some advice on the advisability of that at this time?
Thank you. As the solicitor indicated, council certainly has the option of considering land acquisition or disposition as a matter in closed session. It would be open, therefore, for council to refer this item to the closed session portion of the meeting. We have done that in the past. It is entirely permissible. So you could move a motion to refer this to the consideration to the closed session portion of today's meeting.
Okay, so I think that's your answer, Councillor Munch. If you're going to be asking questions that you can't ask in open session, then I think that would be appropriate for you to make that.
So I'm going to leave it with everybody else to see if anybody else feels, because I don't want to move it on my own and make this cumbersome for everyone to lay this whole proceeding. So I'm going to put it out there. I think we should have a discussion in camera about this. Just for whatever reason, I just feel more comfortable. But if the other members of council don't think so, I'm okay. Just let it debate and continue. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor DiPaolo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's necessary to go into camera. I think this motion should be soundly rejected and voted down. I believe it's wholly inappropriate. There's no requirement to go into camera because we're not even given a property address, or we don't even know what land is being spoken of. But for one counselor to say that his office was contacted and we have a limited time, one-time offer to buy land within the municipalities is just not in any way, shape, or form in line with the way we conduct matters, especially with the disposition of land or the acquisition of land. We have a process, and this motion would be much more appropriate if we were to refer the need for a second off-leash dog park in the south of Richmond Hill, which I agree with, to a proper process for acquisition of land, and any number or permutation of other options that direct our staff to engage in our proper acquisition process I would support. But this member motion as it's worded, I cannot support it. And I think council, I don't think it needs to be referred or deferred. It needs to be soundly rejected for the lack of transparency in the manner in which it's been presented. That's not how we operate or nor should any municipality. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Shepherd.
Actually heading to Canada, and we expect to see him in the.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Yes, I agree with Deputy Mayor DePaula. The motion is not specific at all. These are my questions. Where's the property? Why is it not identified in the motion? What's the existing use of the property? If the owner's interested in selling the property to the city, how come they haven't gotten in touch with the city and the appropriate departments? Why are they offering the city right of first refusal? If the land is beneficial to the adjacent lands for development purposes, then what is the owner's intent by offering it to the city at a special rate, we'll call it. So for these reasons, because none of these have been specified in the motion or addressed, I cannot support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silvitz, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can support this motion for the reasons already stated by Councillors DePaulo and Shepherd. They are 100% correct. This is not the procedure or the process that we go through in order for the city to acquire land. And there is a procedure and there is a process. And should this person, whoever they may be, because we don't know who they are and we don't know the address, and quite frankly, this is obviously in Ward 5, and I know nothing about this. I haven't been consulted. So there's no way I can support this. This is not how the municipality acquires land. And
Point of order.
We are.
Point of order, Councillor Pirelli.
Mr. Mayor, this is the third member of council you've allowed to impugn my reputation by stating that I'm doing something that's outside of the procedures.
That's
I would hope that, don't interrupt me. I would hope
don't
that
speak
you
to
would
me like that.
Don't interrupt me.
Councillor Pirelli, what's your point of order?
My point of order is this is the third member of council you've allowed to state misinformation, that this is somehow outside of the normal course of process. It is exactly the course of process that we take. There's a piece of land that I have identified through a request to give us an option. They're being generously allowing us first right of refusal, and you've allowed 3 members of council now to make disparaging statements against me. Stop it. Don't allow it.
Councillor, I think what they're saying is that this is not the normal process.
Stop it. This is the normal process.
Okay.
I challenge you to tell me what the normal process is then. Quote it.
It is
Quote
not
the process for land acquisition. Quote it for me.
It is not the process that we would normally see.
Quote it.
That
Quote
I
the
would,
process that you're saying that I'm not following.
I'm trying to explain that to you.
No, you don't have a process that we follow because this is the process.
Okay. Councillor
You
Silovitz,
don't want
continue.
an off-leash dog park in the south. I understand. Just don't impugn my reputation by stating that I'm doing something, and don't allow members of council to state that I'm doing something that is outside of our process. That's my point of order.
Thank you. I would ask
record.
council members to make sure that they're referring to this in another way. Councillor Silovitz, go ahead.
Thank you. One moment. I never said that I don't want an off-leash dog park in this area. Never said that. So if the councillor's saying that, he's impugning me. I never said that. What I said was, we need proper consultation here. And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to our city solicitor.
Point of order.
To our city solicitor.
Point of
Point
order.
of order, Councillor Pirelli.
Stating that we need proper consultation suggests that this is somehow improper. The councillor should apologize for her statement.
No, Councillor, she's asking for a consultation that
No,
is
that's not what she
kind
said.
of.
She
No.
said this isn't proper consultation.
No, I'm sorry,
She
but
wants
I
proper consultation to suggest, you can go over the tape as many times as you like. She said she wants proper consultation, suggesting that this is somehow improper conduct. I'm not going to sit here and be rated in this fashion.
that is not the way I interpreted what she said.
It doesn't matter
Councillor.
how you interpret it. If your lack of education doesn't allow you to understand when someone's being.
Point of
accused,
order,
it's not
Councillor
my problem.
Pirelli. Point of order. You have,
No,
with all
deal
due
with my
respect.
point of order. You don't
Here's
raise
my
a
point of order.
order.
My
You
point
don't
of
raise a
order.
point of
Everybody
order while the
stop,
point of
please.
order is being.
Councillor
Question.
Pirelli, I don't think that is what Councillor Silovitz said, but I would
That's
prefer
exactly what
actually.
she said.
No, it is not what she meant. I am quite
Oh,
certain
now you
of
know
it.
what she meant, but it is what she said.
Councillor Pirelli, I've ruled. Councillor
You've ruled.
Councillor
on it.
Shepherd, you have a point of order.
It's just code of conduct 10.2, duty to treat coworkers with respect. I don't feel that Councillor Pirelli is doing that right now. Thank you.
Okay, I agree. I do have an education. So thank you. Councillor Silovitz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our city solicitor, could he walk us through what the process is? Because in my 8 years that I've been a councillor, I've never come across something like this before. And I know that we have purchased land, or someone has come forward to say that they've got a piece of land that they wish to sell to the city. So through you to our city solicitor, what is the process if something like this is to occur? And I believe that we would probably be under restraints with the Municipal Act as well. Thank you.
Good question, Mr. DeMilta.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the process with respect to acquisitions as opposed to dispositions, with acquisitions is essentially, there was a confirmatory bylaw back in 114-11 that simply delegated authority to the city manager to execute all documents for acquisition. So the only requirement is that council identify a property for acquisition. So that in terms of the bylaws that govern the acquisitions in terms of delegated authority. In terms of by convention, essentially deficient areas of the city are identified, if it's for off-leash dog park or if it's parkland, by city staff. And then there's a working group on the property committee to identify deficient areas. And then the specifications for the property to be acquired are gathered, and then staff go and search out those properties. And then we bring forward reports to council, essentially saying, here's a property that we're interested in acquiring that's either for sale on voluntary disposition or even for expropriation. And then council identifies saying, okay, city solicitor, go out and attempt to acquire that property. But the only thing in terms of bylaws are the delegated authority to acquire, and the only prerequisite is that council identify the property for acquisition. And the other thing I mentioned is just by convention in terms of how properties are identified for specific purposes.
Okay, thank you. That's actually helpful. Councillor Silovitz, go ahead.
Very helpful. Thank you very much, Mr. DeMilta. So we don't know the address. We know nothing about this property other than what is in the motion. So as the local councillor, just to go back to the issue of the actual dog park, what is before us here. In the 8 years that I have been the Ward 5 councillor, I have had numerous discussions over and over again with residents who would like to have an off-leash dog park in the south. I think I agree with that. I have nothing against that whatsoever. I have discussed a number of locations of city property with staff, and we've gone through the whys and the wherefores and the positives and the negatives. And the portions of land that we were always looking at, were not conducive because they were too close to residential housing. Now, the other dog park that is being referred to here on Tower Hill, when this came forward to council, and I sat through all of these meetings, there was an inordinate amount of negative pushback from the residents who live around that area, who were complaining and were concerned about noise issues, mess issues, etc. So I could not agree to something like this because we don't know where the land is. We don't know what the offer is or could be. And further to that, I have had further discussions with staff about an off-leash dog park to be constructed in the Richmond Hill Centre. And that is something that is probable because a piece of public land can be chosen that is far away from any residential areas, such as at the park where we have it on Leslie. Sorry, I just can't remember the name right now. Our other off-leash dog park. So Phyllis Rawlinson. So I can't support this. I'm not impugning anybody. This is just not the way to go. And Mr. DeMilta basically he said, yeah, that's correct.
Point of
So
order.
from what I've been hearing,
Point of
no,
order.
I will not support this.
Point of order.
Point of order. Mr. DeMilta did not say that. What Mr. DeMilta actually said was that council identifies a piece of land and then puts it through the process. That's exactly what my motion is. The council should not state misinformation that way.
I think Mr. DeMilta, in fairness, did say that council, it's the mechanism that land could be brought to council, but I actually don't think that's actually a point of order. That's a disagreement. But Councillor Silovitz, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, no, that's what I mean. No, I don't support this. This doesn't deserve any further discussion. The motion's on the floor. I don't support it, and I don't support it for very valid reasons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barros.
I've brought land before, sometimes just to staff to look at. Staff never told me, oh my goodness, Councillor, this is inappropriate. You shouldn't be having these conversations with us. I've brought motions before for land to be acquired. And council at the time didn't say, oh my goodness, Councillor, this is completely inappropriate. Councillor Papa brought motions before when I was on council. Council nor staff never said, Councillor Papa, that's inappropriate. We're not looking at a motion in front of us that says, go pay them this much money, make it happen. So maybe you don't like the wording. Maybe you don't like the councillor. You're just lashing out with your anger. That's fine. That's politics. But if that's what you're doing and you're getting in the way of the business of the city of Richmond Hill, you got to be careful. It's just anger at the councillor. Be careful. Because what this motion is saying is have staff go and talk to this landowner and see if we can't make a deal. Staff has to then come back to us in camera with, we've spoken to the landowner, their prices are completely out to lunch, we can't make a deal. Or they might come back and say, we've looked at the property in question and it's not large enough for an off-leash park. There's a litany of reasons why they may or may not take it. If any of you are reading this motion thinking that this locks us into buying the property, no ifs, ands, or buts, I would challenge you all to take a deep breath, understand what is in front of us actually, the process that it's going to have to go through before it actually gets to a decision of council. You all know the process. Save and except for one, you're new, that's okay. But other than that, the rest of you, you know the process. Any one of us can bring a piece of property to this council and say, staff, can you investigate? And it may or may not. I mean, the piece I brought last time, brought it to a public council meeting. We ended up not buying it. That's life. You win some, you lose some. But to say that this is completely inappropriate, come on, guys, that's not true. That's not true. So I maybe have one question through you to the mover of the motion. Can we not give the address in public session? Why couldn't we? If not, we need to go in camera for that. I don't know why that's not there. The times that I've brought stuff, I've listed the address.
Happy to answer the question, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me.
Okay, I don't see any reason. I'm nodding from Mr. Clerk, so go ahead.
Okay, so the reason I specifically left the address out for two reasons. Number one, the address is a very weird address. And number two, I felt that it's really irrelevant where it is, and I don't want to disadvantage the city in any way, shape, or form. And so sometimes less is more. I thought that we would just hand this over to staff. They would ask me which property it was. They would go and start a negotiation. I've already informed the commissioner, and they would come back to us at some point and report back with what they found. If it's appropriate, like Councillor Barrow said, if it's not appropriate, I'm happy to give you the property, but maybe it's best we just keep it secret for now so that, you know, staff can go and do the negotiation. If it doesn't work, because when they do bring it back to council, it will be in closed session. So I purposefully left the address out, but happy to go in camera. I just think it's a wonderful opportunity to investigate, because if it does work, great for us. And if it doesn't work, well, at least we gave it a shot. And so far, I haven't, you know, in speaking with the commissioner, oh, sorry about that. I thought my ringer was off. In speaking with the commissioner, those were his exact concerns, that, you know, as long as the motion says that, and that's why I added the appropriate staff, not just the real estate department, because obviously, you know, whether it's feasible as an off-leash dog park is possible. Also, as well, I wanted to add, Councillor Barrows, that maybe the park isn't suitable for an off-leash dog park, but it could be used as a linear park. And that's always something we're looking for. I believe it's in a good location to support that as a linear park. You know, we've always talked about the fact that we don't have enough land, and land is at a premium, and we're looking for more parks. So look, you know, if the council doesn't want to look into this, that's great. If it fails here, I'll just direct them to contact the real estate department directly, or the local councillor. That's fine too. I just didn't want to lose the opportunity, because they did approach me and they said, you know, we would like to offer to the city for an off-leash dog park, because we saw the need in the park plan. They didn't suggest, as Councillor Shepherd said, why would they give us a discount? They're not looking to give us a discount. They just want to give us first right of refusal, because obviously they think it's of more value to us than it is to the adjacent neighboring lands. That's their strategy. I always believe it's about making money. And so if they sell it to us, that'll be the highest and best use. That's what they believe. It's up to city staff to look into it, report back to this council. And at that point, if council doesn't like what staff have come back with, great. This is just to start the process to look into this piece of land.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you for
Councillor
the
Barros,
question.
you still
Thank
have
you,
the floor.
Councillor Barros, for the question.
Yeah, I'll support it because it's nothing more than asking staff to look into it. Through the mayor to our city solicitor, just so that I'm clear, do you read this as an obligation of the city to purchase this land?
Mr. DeMilton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't see it as an obligation to just purchase the land, but so council would have to be satisfied to direct the city solicitor, because I have control of the property division as well, to go and investigate. And as part of, there are costs associated with investigating. For example, we'd have to get a double ACI appraisal, so I would have to expend some monies. I just don't want council to be under the impression that it's simply a discussion. Part of those discussions in terms of surrounding price, if it gets to that, I would have to come back to council and say, we've negotiated a price and it's consistent with the appraised value. There'd have to be some analysis in terms of the utility for programming and so forth. So there would be costs associated with that in terms of preparing a report back. But it doesn't obligate at this point, at this juncture, the acquisition of it, but it does direct city solicitor to sort of take this information from an individual councillor and then operationalize it by starting the negotiations.
Okay, thank you.
And through the mayor again, obviously, it's without saying, if operations staff said we could never use this for a linear park or a off-leash dog park, you would just come back and report that. You wouldn't go and expend money and get appraisals and everything else and put a complete package together and then come back and tell us, but we can't use it. I mean, that's kind of an obvious question, but just so that no one is confused, we're not saying you must go and do all this. It's vague enough that if you find that you can't use it whatsoever, you come back and say, yeah, it was a dud. Thanks for trying. Keep looking. Because lots of land becomes available that's not listed on MLS. We all know that. So we need to, if we hear stuff, bring it through, whichever method. I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Mr. DeMilton, did you want to answer that, or?
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't think it required a response. Yeah, it's an obvious.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else on the first round? Okay, we have Councillor DePaulo wanted to speak on the second round. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The wording in this very short resolution is that staff be directed to enter into negotiations with this landowner in an attempt to secure it for an off-leash dog park. So if it were suitable on the fact that staff has delegated authority to make such purchases, this is a very definitive directive that would be given from council. And I am aware that motions have come to council even by an individual councillor of a prospect for land that may have a municipal use. And whenever that's happened, you know the size of land, you know the address, you know the location, you know an approximate sale price, and you know this we're asked in this case for eight members of council to be blind to even where this piece of land is before we support this resolution to make a very specific direction to our staff. So I do insist further that it is inappropriate to proceed in this manner on this hot tip that one member of council's got, that he thinks it's best not to disclose.
You're interrupting. No, you are. You're interrupting. It's
No.
not your turn to speak.
Not present. The question was asked of the mover whether they intended to disclose the address, and if knowing that we could go into camera and easily have a very specific discussion about the very specific property, and you know the fact that the mover chose not to do that further concerns me about why this limited time offer is so advantageous to Richmond Hill. This is highly unusual. That we have had requests come from an individual councillor on known properties, and we've given direction to staff to pursue purchases where all members of council are well aware and can vote with their eyes wide open on going forward. So it's not intended. I have no. It's irrespective of my feelings for the councillor. It's the process. It's simply the manner in which it's presented, and I do have the concern that was expressed by Councillor Shepherd, and I don't think it was adequately addressed, because if the landowner felt that the city of Richmond Hill could effectively pay the highest amount, and they would still put it on the open market and test that we would be the ones to give the highest offer for the land. It makes no sense to me whatsoever why the landowner would be offering in a non-competitive process. A non-competitive process is always going to result in a lower price. That's just, well, just in theory, it will result in a lower price. And why the landowner would want to one-off negotiate rather than put it out to the market for even with the belief that the city could ultimately pay more than someone else would pay. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. I've never encountered a situation where a seller would want to entertain something like this. And the only thing that would make it possible is if it were a truly gregarious landowner who truly wanted to help Richmond Hill to acquire lands for a Doglege park. It would be of a donation in nature. That's the only way I could see that a landowner would part with his property in this manner, unless he was a dog owner or someone who just really wanted to give back to the community in this way. And that's not been the explanation that's been offered. But save and except for that, there's something else going on, that it's being proposed in this manner.
Okay. Is there any, okay, Councillor Munch, second round.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is second round. I think I spoke already.
You did, yes. You can have a second round. Go ahead, if you'd like.
Okay. So there are at least 4 members of council, 1, 2, 3 members of council, 4 members of council, including myself. I have taken on a tour of Richmond Hill individually, and I've shown how we, over the last 30 years, have not executed what our plans were from 40 years ago in writing on lands. In the last 2 years, we've executed some actions that have been contrary to what our future is, because we said the present matters. Who cares about the future? We're just going to do it now. We'll worry about it later. And the cost of doing that is going to be substantial. Substantial being that, will we ever do what we really envision to do as a municipality? And if we don't believe here today that we should ever envision to have a municipality we want going forward, I'm saddened by that, because I would hope that members of council who are here because they have a vision for Richmond Hill or have an impression that they want a better Richmond Hill. So I applaud the notion of communication and open engagement and allow people to do their work so that we can get to a better place. So I don't know about this lands. I don't really know anything really about it. It's like everybody else, which is why I prefer to go on camera. But I'm going to say to you, if it meets our needs, then let's get there. If it doesn't meet our needs, or we don't believe it needs our needs for what we decide to do today, fair enough. Can we please, how many times do I need to say this today? Raise ourselves to the point where we put this municipality and the benefits of this municipality first. I'm not really witnessing that a lot today in my lens. I'm seeing people bicker, what have you. I don't know the situation. I don't really know the engagement party. At least I don't think I do. I don't know where this is going. I do think, though, it's worth a conversation, which is why I seconded the motion. And some of the discussion today, I keep saying it in hopes. I won't say prayers, although it has been in my prayers and seeing it's Holy Week. I really expect more of myself. And I expect more of other people here. And I think others watching. And when I get commentary from people saying, what a dysfunctional group you are, I'm embarrassed by that because I'm part of it. And I guess say to you today, this is a good example, although I'm not condoning this application or whatever they're doing here. I am saying that we today, with the $100 an hour for each person that's in here, we got 15 people in here. Imagine the cost that this is costing a municipality for having this kind of banter. I think we should be better. I ask us to please grow up a bit. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pirelli, I see your virtual hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, this has been a really good discussion. If the question was asked, and it was a good question. Does this somehow tie the municipality into purchasing this land? And the solicitor answered very clearly, absolutely not. This is about them staff going, appropriate staff, finding out if this is an appropriate piece of land and taking it from there. And it's just another option for staff to consider. It's really staff that are going to decide, hey, maybe we could use it as an off-leash dog park. Maybe we could use it as a linear park. And if the answer is no, no harm, no foul. But at least we've given it a shot. Because if they say, well, maybe we can use it for this, then of course, they would go to the city solicitor, as we all know the process, and the city solicitor would say, okay, we're going to use a few dollars. They want $10. We want to offer $8. What's it really worth? And it just starts the process. But to just dismiss it altogether, I don't think it's doing the residents of Richmond Hill any justice. So, some of the comments that were made that this ties our hands, it's just not true. This is about giving an opportunity to staff to look into this piece of land. Like I said, where it is irrelevant. We're not going to decide if we're going to buy it today. Wherever it is, we're just asking staff to look into it. And if it's really inappropriate, then it'll be a 30-second decision. That's garbage. We're not going to even entertain that, and that'll be the end of it. But like I said, if we're being transparent, open and honest, and somebody really wants to know where it is, we'll go on camera, and I'm happy to disclose it. If you need to know that information to support this motion, I'm going to respectfully suggest that's irrelevant where it is, because we're not buying it. We're just asking staff to look into it. Secondly, the process, this is the process. Like Councillor Barrow said, we find a piece of land, they're not always on MLS, and we go about, suggesting it to staff. We could do it directly, indirectly. I did it in the most transparent way possible. I brought it to council for the world to know. And, for someone to suggest that something else is going on, totally inappropriate. And that person knows who made that comment, and it won't go unnoticed. the other thing I wanted to say was that this landowner, I don't know their intent. I don't know if they want to gift it to the city. I don't know how much money they want. I don't know if they even want to sell it at the price we're willing to offer. The whole point is that let our staff go and look into it because it's an option. And for 10 years, we haven't been able to find a solution. Not in Ward 5, not in Ward 6, not in the South. Staff have not come up with a solution. So I'm just putting it out there as a potential. And the last thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, is this. You'll know and understand the spirit of my motion. If you don't like the person presenting it, I understand. But if don't use the motion as an excuse. If you don't like the wording and you think the wording, even though the solicitor has assured you there is absolutely no commitment on the part of the city to purchase this property, if you didn't like the wording, make an amendment, right? Say just to look into the feasibility of this property. Happy to do that. But to just outright turn it down, I don't think that's in the best interest of the city. So I'll leave my motion as is since no one suggested any changes to it. The solicitor has appropriately addressed all of the concerns. This is simply look into it. If it's possible, if it's feasible, report back and we'll take it from there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Munch, for seconding it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? Councillor Shepherd.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's very interesting because, and I'll speak for myself, I raised some questions which in my opinion were valid for me to determine whether or not it's feasible to proceed with this. And in conversation, I've heard that I've impugned someone's character, even though nothing I stated and none of the questions I had anything to do with the integrity of the person that brought forth the motion. I heard that I may not like the mover of the motion, even though I don't know the mover well enough to have personal feelings either way. I think this is a forum in which we can express our opinions and have a healthy debate without feeling that we need to curb what we have to say or our opinions just to appease our colleagues. I cannot support the motion for the reasons that we determined. In the future, if possible, I'd like more specificity in the motion so that we avoid wasting staff's time. We talked here about how valuable staff's time is and how we need to give them clear directions as to how to proceed. Perhaps we can follow what we've decided and put more information in the motions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so seeing no other speakers, it's time to call the vote. Can you please put the motion up on the screen, Mr. Clerk? Recorded vote called by Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you. Voting on the motion. Councillor Silovitz.
No.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
No, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
No.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor Pirelli.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Councillor Munch.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Barros.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Chan.
No.
Thank you. Mayor West.
No.
Thank you. That motion fails to carry.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk, at this point in time, there are some correspondence I think that we have to move. Is that correct?
No, to you, Mr. Chair, those were all done under the consent
Okay,
agenda.
sorry.
We have the bylaws at this time.
Okay. Should we do that before the next item is to go in camera, and I think we need to probably take a break at 6 o'clock for dinner. Right, I know. So let's do that first. So which ones, I guess we can do them all?
I'm sorry, is that a bylaw? I didn't know that. Is a bylaw we have to break for dinner?
No, we're dealing with the bylaws on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, there's no bylaw for dinner. That would take us at least an hour, and we'd all be starving to death by that time. So, okay, so bylaw 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So moved by Councillor Chan, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries. All right, so the next item then is to a motion to move in camera. I suggest, given that it's 5:45, that we take a break for dinner and be back here by 7 o'clock. No, I think we need to take a break for dinner. So are we all good? All right. So we will be back. Why don't we say it's 5:45 now? Is 6:45 work? 6:45, 1 hour, 59 minutes.